Hey guys, welcome to See It, Touch It, our simplified bread making class with Clark Homestead and Produce. I'm super excited to have you guys here because I'm going to make sure you have an awesome loaf, a beautiful round bowl for your first bread trial. Now, I already actually have all of our ingredients ready because this is such a simple loaf. I will go over all the details, but just to get started, I want to tell you a little bit about this particular loaf. You may or may not have heard of Mark Bittman, who is famous for many things in the food arena. Really popular recipe that he has is his no-knead bread, which is basically the recipe we're using. And you'll see slight variations of this all over the place online. What's so great about it is that it's just 3 cups of flour. This is gonna make 1 loaf. And it's only 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. Now make sure it is instant yeast. This is super important for this no-knead bread. While other breads we're gonna make, you could vary to use a regular active dry yeast or an instant yeast. This really needs the instant yeast. Trust me, I've made the mistake. And then in addition to the 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, you need 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and you need 1 cup and 5/8 of water, and it can be just room temperature tap water. So again, these are all just really basic ingredients. You probably have them in your cabinet already. It's really just follow the recipe. It's important that you follow the recipe to a T, and that's the most difficult part about this. I do want to point out that to bake this bread, it is recommended that you use some sort of round, deep pan, like something you'd use for braising, or a deep cast iron pan with a lid. Now, when I first made this bread, I barely had a big enough pan or pot to do this that would go in the oven. So I ended up using one of my braising pots. It's cast iron, which works just fine. I didn't have a lid, so what I experimented with was simply a piece of foil to keep the heat in, to keep the steam and the heat in, and that worked just fine. And to this day, I still don't have a lid for that big old pot, and I still use foil. If you like, you can also throw in some herbs to this bread. Because it's just a dough that needs a lot of time to do its rising, hence the no knead. You don't have to work the dough and let it rise, work the dough, let it rise. It's just gonna rise on its own. I would stick to something very light. Something like nuts or raisins might be a little too difficult at this point if you're just starting out. However, feel free to add them in at some point if you are getting more comfortable with this type of bread. So just want to point out a few other things regarding tools and ingredients. So I like to use a really big bowl like this for this bread because it's going to need, like I said, a lot of time to rise. So you want to give it space to be able to do that. It's not going to be the worst thing if you don't have a bowl this size, but if you can get one, I definitely recommend it. For any bread making, you need a huge bowl. And then I also went ahead and just mixed our 3 ingredients, the dry ingredients. I like using a whisk or a fork. And this makes sure that you spread all of the salt and the yeast evenly. And don't underestimate how long you need to do that. So give it at least a good minute, 60 seconds of stirring to make sure it's evenly distributed. So let's just go ahead and get started. We're gonna add the water, we're gonna stir it up, we're gonna cover it with some plastic wrap and sit back for a minimum of 12 hours. So keep that in mind, 12 hours minimum. If you wanna time this well so that when 12 hours is up and you need to work with your dough, that you're at home and available and all of that. And if you can give yourself 12 to 18 hours, it might be even better. So maybe a weekend would be a good time to start with this bread. Otherwise, it's just mix and let it sit. So let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and add my 1 cup and 5/8 of water. This is just cool water, tap water. It's been through my Brita. I have really bad tap water. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix this. Ooh, making messes already. Mix this together. Just is gonna be a really wet dough. It gets all of the dry flour incorporated into it really quickly and easily. And what I do is I just keep running my spoon around the bowl, and it picks up all the remaining powdery flour that's left. And once you have it all into one big ball in the center, you're just gonna cover it with a piece of plastic wrap or saran wrap and let it sit for 12 hours minimum. Give yourself 12 to 18. What you're gonna look for is this dough is going to spread out and take up a lot of this bowl. That's why I recommend a big bowl. And you'll see that it's smooth with lots of tiny, tiny bubbles. If you let it go a long time, if it's really ready, it's really, the yeast is really working, you'll see bigger bubbles. I mean, you can't miss them. But don't worry, when you first go in and check it, you're just looking for lots of tiny bubbles. Bubbles mean that it's ready, the yeast has done its job. So we'll get back to you in the next step and we'll look at our bubbly dough. See you soon.